Hey, this is Nick. This is Let's Write Tonight. I'm working on something a little bit different this time around. Before I was doing the Volition, and you actually see my status bar down there, which is just sort of a grim reminder that I'm not working on it right now. I'm going to make that go away. Go away. There we go. So I broke out World of Warcraft because on our server, I actually played on a roleplay server, and my character, Sal'Journ Deepriver, he had a really extensive story, and I've been wanting to add to it. So that's what I'm going to do today, is just chill out and work on this thing. This is almost 8 or 9 pages itself. And over the last few days, I've actually sort of pieced this one together in my head quite a bit more. So I'm going to get after this here. I honestly have more fun writing this story than the Volition. The Volition is me trying to write a more semi-realistic drama. The Deepriver story is way more adventurous and definitely more fun to write, especially because a lot of the scenes that I've written about I've actually gotten to act out with other people, and that's really what motivated a bunch of this writing. So it's not all just from thin air. A lot of this is rehearsed. So let's see. There's actually a few chapters I've wanted to add between this here, so let me... For those who don't know, so this is World of Warcraft. It's a MMORPG. These are all individual folks, and this is a roleplay server, and all that means is you have people who, if you pull them aside, they might be willing to play out a scenario with you, like an adventure or something like that. It's sort of Dungeons and Dragons-esque, minus the order and rules and all that. You can get in the weeds on this, but people will download the little add-on and you can read their individual character stories. You see that in the lower right. And what I'm doing is I'm updating Sal'Journ's. So he is a Tauren Death Knight. If you don't know what Tauren are or what Death Knight are, it's a race within the game. It's a member of the Horde. They have Native American sort of roots in their history and beliefs and behavior. And so there's a lot of nuance to playing a Tauren that I've always loved. I've played this character since 2008 when the Wrath of the Lich King first launched. And then Death Knights are you can see for yourself, they are undead warriors of the Lich King that were raised to help this undead army called the Scourge. Well, the game's progressed several years since, these characters came about, so now they're sort of wandering the world as these immortal beings who, won't die of their own accord. They'd have to be killed, and I would say it's arguable as to whether or not you can actually kill them or just destroy their body. But in the Tauren's case, for Tauren lineage and lore, they're not supposed to be able to be raised as undead. That's supposed to be... It's a unique piece to their race where their spirituality with what they call their Earth Mother, and this is all in-game lore, prevents them from being raised into the undead. Because in the Tauren universe, or in their Tauren lore, it's one, not possible, but two, it's completely against their nature. So for him to exist as undead is particularly painful for him, both him and his kin and culture, to see him like that. But in Sal'Journ's case, and the way I wrote his story, I started with the prelude of his first experience as a Death Knight. And just that way, the reader sort of realizes that when this character is released, because when the Lich King raised these beings, they were extensions of his will, and in the game it'll suggest that they're still extensions of someone else's will, and in this case, this current expansion, Shadowlands, that's Zoval, which we're not gonna go there. But once the Lich King died, in theory, the Scourge, which are the army of the undead, they didn't necessarily regain their will, but they weren't subject to the master's will, and so they just became your rampaging zombies. Well, in the Death Knight's case, they still retained a semblance of individuality. So for Sal, he woke up in the midst of a massacre, because as Arthas died or was killed by the players, he woke up from whatever situation he was in, back in his torn state. And a lot of players who roleplay Death Knights, they'll roleplay that their character doesn't remember being alive. For me, I roleplay that he doesn't remember being a Scourge. So he has his living memory, and then it's just black, and the next thing he knows, he's this fated body of his former self. He's a shadow of his former self, clad in this Sirenite armor, which is just a type of metal, wielding these unholy powers that he didn't have before. He used to be a healer, or specifically a plague shifter, and I'll talk about that maybe some other time. But so it starts off with him as the Death Knight, regaining his self-awareness. And then it jumps into chapter 1, which is him in his youth. And it progresses with him and his brother growing up, and then eventually reaching this point where Sal does die to another Death Knight, and that's where he's raised. And then it's 15 years later, and he's a Death Guard amongst this Forsaken unit, and the Forsaken are fellow undead, not Torn. These are mostly humans from the city of Lordaeron. He joins the Forsaken as a member of the Death Guard. In-game, in our guild's roleplay, it was called the Shadows of Lordaeron. They were an elite unit, sort of drawing parallels between the CIA and our real world. So they were the Forsaken, what would you call it? Shadow army of the Sylvanas Windrunner. So they did all that together. Sal'Journ is faced with a moral dilemma that, he doesn't normally have these issues, but just over time, as he regains his individuality, he's just becoming more and more torn and less undead Death Knight. So he regains some individuality. He has a moral issue with what they're doing. He rises up against it. He ends up being incarcerated by his Forsaken brethren. He's released and he returns home, and there's so much more to this story. But he returns home and finds that the last of his kin have been murdered by a Sylvanas loyalist who took issue with his betrayal earlier in the story. So his kin are slaughtered there. He goes full Death Knight on that individual who he seems to have captured. And then he returns to Northrend chasing Sylvanas, which is what led us into Shadowlands and her escape into the Shadowlands. And that's sort of where the story petered off. But since then, I've had several roleplay encounters where I can actually add to this story and make it meatier and get a lot more character development. So that's what I want to do now. What I might actually do is clean this up a bit. And you can't see their chat bubbles, but not most, maybe not, but a bunch of these people are all just talking. You've got the chat down here. I've got the world chat censored because usually it's just nonsense. I wonder if I can... Nope. Nope. Alright, I'm gonna stop talking. I'm just gonna start writing. Don't mind me. And actually, a lot of the... What? Lowe's sitting there staring at me. I might actually come back here and edit a lot of this because I've learned some tricks that I want to implement here. What I need to make sure I'm doing is saving regularly because this add-on is finicky. So the scene I'm actually describing in this little paragraph is after Sylvanas rips the crown of the Lich King. Gosh, I can't even think of its name right now. The crown. Rips the crown in half, and by doing so, the veil between the living world and the afterlife gets ripped open. And it doesn't make a whole... The longer you think about it, it doesn't make a lot of sense. And it doesn't even make sense in the in-game lore the way it's done. But effectively, this crown shattering is what creates this wormhole in the sky. And it's not a wormhole in that so much as the fabric of space-time explodes and you can just cross over into this different plane. Anywho, when that happened, there was when she ripped the crown in half, the energy surged into the sky cracked like a sheet of ice and then exploded into the Shadowlands. And so what Sal'Journ's doing right now is he's traveling to Northrend chasing Sylvanas, but he's in a Zeppelin, which is an airship, and piloted by the Goblin LaFontaine. So what I'm doing in this scene is they're on the Zeppelin, and after the sky implodes, I'm thinking like the air pressure of like the local area completely goes haywire because you suddenly have however many extra tens of thousands of feet for air to flow into, right, of different air density. So I'm gonna have the Zeppelin crash. After it's sucked upwards, the blimp loses its lift and then they crash downwards again. So I gotta describe that first though. What sucks too is I can't actually zoom in on this text, so this is just as good as it's gonna get. This. Oh, I don't want to do that. Here, this works. That's what we'll do. This thing's always a work in progress. I don't even need to say so. I don't even think most people can load my TRP. There's so much text. It is what it do. What's this guy doing? Oh, this guy was recruiting earlier. Oh, and I don't want to brag either. Bragging is wrong. But check this out. I mean, this is free. You can just get this. It's no effort at all. But I've been waiting for an undead Proto Drake mount forever. So I'd have paid money for this. So thanks, Blizzard, for making me just have to do a quest I love doing anyways for it. Got some more Tauren out there. I like seeing other Tauren role players because they get it. They're the real ones. Huh, Flo? Yeah. Say his a lot in this sentence. We already know the Hearthstone's around his neck. I don't think we need to say this. See, the more you write, the more you pick up on redundant statements and poor word choice and all the other jazz that make your writing kind of make you go, ugh. Who's this guy? He just died? Yep. You never know when it's your time. Save your work, especially on these free add-ons. Let me make my little campfire. Might actually be one of the longer chapters. That's okay. Tauren. Heck. One of the things I've learned while trying to write is don't be so damn specific where you're forcing people to imagine exactly where certain things are located. If it's not pertinent to the progress of the story, then don't worry about it. I love that armor. Save your work. A hearthstone in the game is one of the first items you get, and it's what links you to your inn, basically. And in game, you just use it and you teleport back to your home, which is usually where your quest turn-in is. And once you reach max level, it's just wherever the most convenient location is that you can just teleport there on a whim. I don't know who this guy is, but they were talking to me earlier. They were talking about starting a Tauren RP. Roleplay is what RP stands for. Skyhorn Druid. Skyhorn High Mountain Tauren is a faction and a particular race of Tauren. Flo's being goofy. And those Tauren, their thing is they ride on eagles. Tauren are like 12 feet tall and weigh like 2 tons. I don't know how big these eagles would have to be to do that, but they're in the game. It's aight. Blood Totem are the evil faction of the High Mountain Tauren. Sort of like how you have the Bloodhoof tribe and the Grim Totem tribe of the original Tauren in Mulgore, which is a location. Save your work, even if I didn't type anything. I don't know who Kadohi is, but they started chatting earlier and it was like, all right, well, let's see what they want to do with their story. What are you doing, Flo? I'm choking on my sparkling water and it hurts. Oh, you know what? So in the cinematic, when the sky implodes after the Crown of Domination, that's what it was, the Helm of Domination. After Sylvanas rips the Helm of Domination in two, and it... Magatha? After she rips the crown in two, as she does so, she's doing like a banshee's wail, like that ghostly scream that you'll hear in like movies and games and stuff. So she does the banshee wail, so the sky cracks because that's instant, and then because sound takes longer to travel, you'd hear the wail follow. But these guys aren't anywhere near where this happened. They're in the location, so they see the sky crack and it affects them. But the wail takes a second to reach them because it's traveling through the air. And so I have to time that with the story where on the Zeppelin they see the ripple, the crack, the sky bursts open, and I'm thinking the air pressure would change at about the same time the wail reached them. Okay, so there's the whale. It's the very last thing. Hmm. Save your work. Bursting sort of sorry, that was my cat. Bursting makes more sense than imploding. I don't think people can visualize imploding quite the same way. No. No. Oh, she wants outside. I'll be right back. You learn what they're expecting from you over time. She wanted outside. The yearning gaze just out of reach, not wanting to play, but still wanting your attention. That's cat speak for I want something. And it's that time of night. Save. Aw, I logged off. What I should do, check this out. Boom. Yeah, now we got some mood lighting. Aw. that sentence. Because they're falling right now. They're not just sitting on a stabilized airship anymore. They're falling. Save your work. What are you doing? Smoldering deck. We're almost there. If I have resting bitch face, I'm very hard at work here. And I actually wrote, so again, one of my favorite things to do is I pick a song that I think matches the tempo and emotion that I'm trying to achieve in the story that I'm writing. So there's a specific song I used to write this arc. And I can't play it because it'll get freaking muted on Twitch. So sorry for that, but that's how I write. I listen for music that I think paces well with the story. Gosh, I'm surprised how few people are talking. Usually there's all kinds of nonsense going on. Do I have people muted? No? People are just being quiet. That's crazy. I once applied to be a firefighter on a summer job, and I think I spelled forest wrong, and I want to say that might be why they didn't hire me. Question is that how you spell underneath? Help me, internet. No. Damn. Damn, we've been going for an hour already? Well, it's just as well. I'm almost done here. So I'm doing the same thing here to indicate a black screen. I did it at the very beginning too. But I did 5. There we go. So the very last thing he says is home, which is answering what LaFontaine asked him, where are you going? At the time, Sal'Journ probably didn't have a good answer, but after that crash and seeing what happened, he's like, yeah, I'm going that way. So this pretty much completes what I wanted to get done here. I hope you had fun. I hope you're working on your stories, and we'll see you next time.